Okay, so let's talk about the first step of writing a manuscript, and that is creating an outline. And we'll talk about the pre research phase of this outline. First of all, you want to recommend or actually insist to your client that you must work from a pre approved outline when writing a manuscript. So it's really important because otherwise there will be sort of a lack of understanding about the scope. They can add in sections, they can change direction, and so it becomes unclear, what you're signing up for. So you really need to have an outline. The second thing is you really need to understand why you are writing this manuscript. Is it to publish findings? Is it to help a pharma company with their publications planning? So they put out publications about new classes of agents, of which they have one coming out, that kind of thing. And who is supporting it? Sometimes it's not a commercial support, but oftentimes it is. And you just need to keep that in mind as you write the manuscript. There are fair balance requirements if it's a CME manuscript, just like we talked about in the previous module. They're rarely promotional, in nature. They are, unless it's called something like a white paper or something else. But a manuscript that's going to be published in a peer reviewed journal is going to be, non promotional, fair balanced. You want to check with your client to see what information they already have. Oftentimes they have it and they don't think to give it to you. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. They may have actually even a complete outline. That's often the case. Or they may want you to create it. So either way, you end up with an outline that you're going to be working from. You also want to make sure you know the level of detail the client is expecting in the outline and do they have an example format. So let me show you one type of outline here. So this is probably one of the most detailed types of outlines that you would have, and they may be expecting that from you. Let me just go through. So you see it's even annotated with references, but it's really in bulleted list format of what's going to be covered, different sections that are going to be covered. And you can actually see the word count of this outline is it's over 6,000 words. So it actually probably needs to be pared down when it's written up. So that's very extensive outline. And then you may go all the way in the other direction to something that's more succinct, just a bulleted list. So again, you're going to need to find out from the client what they're expecting with the outline. And then if there's a target journal at this stage, which there often isn't, but if there is, or a couple of them, you need to download the author guidelines and also work with your client on informing them that, if they are seeking to publish in this journal, which has a limit of 3,000 words, for example, for the type of manuscript you're writing, then you need to let them know that. And they probably already know it, but maybe not. So if they're having you write up a 5,000 word article for a publication that only accepts 3,000 words, then that's a problem. So definitely get that work done up front about where it's going to be published, get the author guidelines, know the word count and the level of detail for the manuscript up front. All right, so now let's talk about researching your outline. This is my sequence of how I use, the latest tools or whatever to write a manuscript. I always start with a Gemini Pro Deep Research search, and you just put in your topic. Okay, so here's the Gemini interface, and I'm going to say, what is the latest research on patients with diabetes and kidney disease? And then I'm going to say, focus your search on scientific journals and PubMed. See if that helps, because you don't want it to give you kind of WebMD references, although that's reputable. It's nothing that you can reference. So you want to be able to reference what if the research that it pulls up. Right. So you make sure deep research is turned on. Make sure the web access is turned on. You do need a pro subscription, I believe, to use deep research, and it's $20 a month. So maybe, you should consider that as a cost of doing business. And then 2.5 Pro is the one that I find to be the best for this research. Okay, and then you hit send. The first thing it does is to put together a plan. So you need to actually give it the go ahead. So it's going to give me all this stuff. All right, perfect. Okay, and then analyze results, create report, and ready in a few minutes. Okay, so you get start research, and then you can just go away. And let's go back to the presentation. All right, so the next thing I do is an actual PubMed search. Set the filter for the last 5 years, 3 years, clinical trials. And then also you want to look at review articles, I would say, in the last year, see if there's anything good coming up in that, that you can see what they wrote about and make sure that you get the main points on your topic. And then you would do a Google News search on your topic, not just a Google search, but a Google News search. I find very helpful to tell me about the latest approved agents, what, anything that comes up on the topic. And make sure you download any relevant info as PDFs. For the PubMed search, I did want to mention that you should download full text as you can. And if you can't access a full text for free, you should still use that study, because just because something's free doesn't mean it should be more likely to appear in your manuscript. So whatever is the best science is what you need to include. And if it's just an abstract, I would recommend downloading the abstract as a PDF file. All right. And just collect all of them. So what you're trying to do here is create a folder for yourself, and it will become apparent why I'm doing that in just a minute. And then the same with any Google News search findings, download as a PDF. And then what you want to do then, once you have your pro research, which might still be thinking, let's check on that. Okay, it's still working on it. Okay, very good. So what you want to do when you've got a bunch of references is to upload your PDFs into Google Notebook LM. Absolutely, really, really, really helpful. All right, so let me just tell you about Google Notebook LM. So you can access it here. It's super easy to use, very good interface. Don't even need to show it or explain it, really. It's very, if you haven't used it, please use it. It's very good. All right, and now it has some limits on it. So the free version is you can upload 50 sources. So that might sort of bump up against how many sources you have for a manuscript. So you can up that to 250 references, which is amazing for the paid version. Just like you will need the paid version to access Google Deep Research. So it's fine, $20 a month. And then it also has a word limit, words per source, which I can't imagine having that many words in a source. Okay. But you can upload all of those. And once you've done that, then you can query Google Notebook LM. Let me just show you one that I've done in the past. Let me pull that up. All right, so here's one on relapsed refractory multiple myeloma that I did. And I think this actually was for needs assessment, so I came at it a little differently. But you can see I've uploaded all my sources, and I can query anything I want. What are the bispecific antibodies used in RRMM? It's got 19 sources, and it will tell you currently there are 3 antibodies, and it will tell you what they are. This is all really good information for your outline. And with this, it will show you the source of where it got the information. So that's really amazing. So you can actually go to the data where it pulled it. Now, it's not always the data that you should cite. It's not always the reference that you should use, but it tells you where you get the information. In this universe of 19 sources, which I have for RRMM, I know that it's not going to give me any hallucinations. It's going to tell me where it got the information, and it's all very amazing. All right, so you can go through your outline and create your outline based on this kind of thing. Just copy and paste and modify as needed. Very, very, very helpful. And then Google Notebook LM is still working on this, but what this will come up with, you can see it's nearly done. What this will come up with is also a Google Doc. So it's not actually, you can't put it in, upload it into Google Notebook LM as a Word document. You have to load it as a Google Doc, but that's fine. You can load that in there once that's ready. And then I showed you that very extreme example of an outline with annotations and everything like that. And I would say the key principle for that is, you want to do what your client expects as far as an outline. You would also need to get it approved by a key opinion leader. You want like an expert person looking at that outline to make sure that it is in fact what is needed, because you don't want some expert coming back later saying that the outline was no good. Okay, so and it's important as a medical writer to work under the, I wouldn't say supervision, but alongside a KOL, because their name's going to be on the manuscript, not yours. All right. The more detailed your outline, the easier your manuscript will be to write, obviously.